down under, where they're having a wonderful summer season, while I'm sitting here in Wisconsin, USA, freezing my off at 27 degrees Fahrenheit. That's Fahrenheit, Nick, not Celsius. So believe me, it's a little bit cold here. So if you're watching the live stream, I'm going to introduce you to this gentleman right here. This is Nick Bolton, and I don't know Nick for Adam. In fact, his middle name might be Adam for all I know. But I do know somebody that is very near and dear to the hearts of anybody who has been a longtime listener of the Nonfiction Brand podcast, and that is Kate Toon, who I love to call the sovereign of SEO from down in Sydney, Australia. Well, you know, I wanted to reach out and meet some new people, so I sent an email out saying, hey, trusted Nonfiction Brand guest, anybody you know that I should know? And the first thing she did was she talked to a few people, Kate Toon, that is, talked to a few people, and Nick came up, and Nick is the first one on the list that I'm going to be talking to tonight. So why don't you introduce yourself very briefly to the Nonfiction Brand podcast listeners, Nick? Just give us 30 seconds on who you are, what you do, and how you do it.
No worries. Well, my Australian accent is almost as bad as yours was because I'm English. Yeah. I've been in Australia 20 years. I came over here, worked for Ogilvy, the ad agencies, which was where I met Kate Toon, in fact. And but after 3 or 4 years, then started a career in film and video and live streaming. I now run a content production company with my wife and business partner called 10 Alphas. We've been going 7 years. We make TV commercials, documentary, bit of film, a lot of social, a lot of lifestyle content. We are also lecturers at the National Film School, AFTRS. We are creative industry business advisors for the New South Wales government. So we help creative practitioners starting their freelance business or in business, and generally just love everything to do with creativity and small business and people getting out there and following their dreams, basically.
Well, great. And one of the things that sold me on getting you on the podcast was this little write-up that you sent me via Kate, and that is, did you know emotion is 22 times more likely than fact to be remembered in storytelling? Too often branding is boastful, me, look at my products and features. Yet we buy off humans and our relationships with them. So finding emotion in your storytelling is crucial. Nick, I could not agree more. And frankly, that's a huge part of what the Nonfiction Brand podcast is about and what my titular philosophy, nonfiction branding, is about. You know, you worked at Ogilvy, and I know Ogilvy has a Circle R branding process. You know, we here in the United States, a Circle R is a registered trademark, right?
Yes.
And and I've worked at a bunch of different ad agencies, and they all had what I call a Circle R branding process, which is all the same stuff with a little bit different packaging, you know. Yeah. However, one of the things that I should probably tell you this, because the Nonfiction Brand idea did not come from, you know, what Zeus's forehead was. Is that one of the goddesses or something like that? Aphrodite, didn't she come from Zeus's forehead? I don't know. But it came from the fact that I was working on a project at an ad agency in Atlanta, Georgia, and had an absolutely terrible creative brief. And I march into the account manager's office to complain. And I march into the account manager's office to complain about the quality of the brief. And I said, I am not a fiction writer. And that kind of stuck with me. So if I'm not a fiction writer, and by the way, I can write terrible fiction. There's no doubt about that. But when it comes to advertising and marketing writing, I need to know what the truth of the product, service, person, whatever is. And that kind of put me on that nonfiction brand idea, which is this is about knowing who you are so you can be it. And it sounds like you share a similar philosophy when it comes to telling true, honest, emotional stories. Am I getting that right?
Can I give you an example?
Like, absolutely.
So I do a lot of case study and documentary work. And as you'll well know, when it comes to interviewing people, I know it will go well if I've done my discovery with them, i.e., I've had a chat with them prior. And that is done several ways, reasons to break the ice. It gives me an opportunity to understand what their character and personality is. And I like to mirror the person I'm interviewing. So if they're quite serious and professional, I can go that way. And if they're really laid back and use an an expletive, I'll go that way. Whatever it might be, I kind of mirror them. But during that discovery process, I also like to just find out their quirk, their weird thing, the odd thing about them that we can like. It was just the hook,
Right.
because if you just go in with what's the product, feature, benefit, sell, it becomes really boring. And one of my proudest pieces of content was a piece I did for Telstra, which is the biggest telecommunications company, okay, in Australia. Huge organization, one of the biggest in Australia. And we did a case study on a client of theirs up in the Hunter Valley. And in the edit, I didn't mention the Telstra word, the T word, until about 70 seconds into the 2-minute clip. And it actually got through their 8 stages of approval because I'd started it with such an emotional, uh, personal human story that it hooked everybody. And so that when Telstra was the answer, everybody was already engaged. It had got through that first, 10, 15 seconds of do I continue or not, switch on, switch off, I was
Yeah.
very proud.
Well, boy, that resonates with me because I remember early on in my career as a advertising copywriter, I would write radio spots,
Mm,
typically 60 seconds back in the day, 60-second radio spots. And I literally had creative directors who were schooling me on how to write the right kind of radio spot, that
yeah,
you better mention the name of the company or the service or the product in the first 10 seconds or you're wasting time. And by the way, you need to have at least 3 mentions of the product, service, or whatever in every spot. And I'm like, why? Because if you could tell a compelling story that gets people's attention, so much so that when they hear the advert come on again, they pay even more attention because they like the story that was being told. Why not let them discover the brand, because you're
yeah,
actually demonstrating the brand and how they
yeah.
care, etc. I see you nodding your head and almost violently.
That approach just means everything becomes homogenized, everything becomes the same. And advertising can get really boring when it's like that. You know, advertising can have a bad name to it, but when you are advertised to with something you love, you don't actually realize you're being advertised to
Yeah.
because it hits the market, and it resonates with who you are as an individual, as a person. And I love really good advertising that speaks to me, you know.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, here in the United States, we have the big Super Bowl football match game. We don't call them matches; they're games,
yeah,
and that's what we call the Super Bowl of advertising because the huge brands buy up, $3 million a 30-second spot to pull out the stops. Well, in the UK, Christmas time is kind of the Super Bowl of advertising for the UK. Does Sydney or does Australia have a kind of the premier event at which prestige companies always tell their stories?
probably not to the degree of Christmas or Super Bowl. I mean, cricket is the national sport here, and there is a tradition in so there's basically 5 tests in the cricket season, starting in November, finishing in January. And the Melbourne test always starts on Boxing Day, and the Sydney test always starts on the 2nd of January. And so there's a lot of ads that are cricket orientated around that time. And it's quite interesting how they've evolved over, like, I've been in Australia 20 years now. And now it's very story led advertising, and encouraging youngsters to get involved, and of course the wonderful movement to encourage women's cricket as well now. And I think that advertising has raised its game a lot,
Yeah.
but nothing to the degree of Super Bowl.
Do you think that's a missed opportunity in Australia right now?
Um, Possibly. I mean, Yeah, yeah. I'm just trying to think of an event that it could hang itself on. Um, Christmas is a lot more laid back here. Still, as an Englishman, I find it strange being on the beach on Christmas Day and
Sure.
eating
And you've been
seafood
there
raw.
20 years.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I want to ask you a question about storytelling from your point of view. Specifically, what is your definition of storytelling when it comes to the context of telling your personal story in a with the goal of building your personal brand awareness in the marketplace in a way that is completely true to who you are, what you do, and how you do it?
Sure. Um, so I mentioned earlier I'm a lecturer at AFTRS, the Australian Film, Television and Radio School, and one of the courses we teach is content creation and applied storytelling. And in that we came across a definition which I really liked, which I might just read out to you. It's a recount of events in which someone we care about has a goal, problem, or desire, and they're having increasing difficulty getting it. This means they take increasingly risky actions, resulting in successful failure, which causes them or others to change, thereby illuminating a truth about human life. Now, that's certainly a definition that is, applied to films makings, film
Sure,
storytelling.
sure.
If we distilled that down into something that is a bit more about our own personal self and comes to, say, small business branding, it's basically stories of fact wrapped in context, delivered in emotion. And I think it's the delivering in emotion bit that is often left out. We have seen in the last 5 years the explosion in online courses and online content. And there are hundreds of these life coaches and course gurus and things like that. And they all make it, a shiny holy grail that they're going to resolve for you based on their experience. It's one of the things I love about Kate Toon, actually, is that she's created her community, the Misfit Entrepreneurs, where it's like, business is really tough. It's not shiny. It's not like full of success. It's got loads of failure and hard times where it seems like grit and perseverance need to come through and asking for help. And that's why what I love about Tooney's community is that it's like, let's get rid of all that bullshit, all that shiny stuff, and let's just be a bit more truthful to what's going on. So when it comes to myself, I mean, I guess my attributes are I'm very laid back. I like to have a lot of fun. uh, I'm driven by fun and happiness and experience rather than profit and uh, financial goals. Um, so, but at the same time, whenever we deliver work, what I do take seriously is delivering on time, delivering on budget with a smile on my face, and maybe throwing a little bit of extra value, because it's a well-known cliche, but keeping hold of a client is a lot cheaper than trying to find a new one.
Yeah, that's very true.
And because I'd like to think, a lot of my clients have stayed with me for a long time. I don't actually do that much marketing
Right.
or advertising.
Well,
We're okay on social. We post a bit, but we very rarely do any paid or sponsorship advertising. But we're both as the founders of the business, we're both very active in our communities. We're very active in networking. We often enjoy speaking. We enjoy teaching, because all that stuff generates something else that Kate Toon talks about is EAT: expertise, authority, and trust. And I think if you just carry on with that mindset, the word of mouth will help. Yeah.
yeah, well, if I can translate that into some of the nomenclature I use all the time, it all comes down to a single word, and that is demonstrate. You
Mm-hmm.
demonstrate who you are, what you do, and how you do it in such a way that everything you deliver to people is aligned with that demonstration, with that brand proof,
Yeah.
so much so that the people you work with now become part of your unpaid sales force because they're your absolute best salespeople. And, you know, that's part of the reason I'm guessing a lot of your clients stay with you for so long. It's that not only do they feel the satisfaction that you demonstrate every time you work with them, but they're also proud to suggest you, to evangelize for you to other people, because
Yes.
they know exactly who you are, what you
Yeah.
do, and how you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
A- Absolutely. You know, like, I, I, yeah, we film a lot of people that have never been on camera before, and for them, it's terrifying, right? And I think one of my strengths is my ability to put people at ease and to make them feel relaxed and try and not make it feel like an interview or whatever it might be. And so does Jess, my wife. She's very good at it as well. And I think that's one of the feedback we often get is that we turned what was a potentially scary experience into something they actually really enjoyed. You know, and again, it comes back to my value of like, let's have fun with this. You know, um, because if you bring out that emotion of fun and enjoyment, it's a very positive mindset, and it will get shared. You know.
Yeah. And one of the things, and people who listen to, and people who listen to the Nonfiction Brand podcast may not be aware, when I contact someone, oftentimes their first expectation will be that, oh, you're going to send me some questions.
Yeah, sure.
And I never, never send questions, because what you get are canned answers instead of very immediate answers that are based on the context of the conversation. So Nick and I literally did not know each other as of 20 minutes ago. And now we're
No.
having an in-depth conversation where I'm getting to know not who he might want to front himself to be, but
Yeah.
who he actually is. And that, I think, is so very important. And one of the reasons, frankly, I do this podcast, you know,
Yeah.
because it's a chance for me to demonstrate who I am, what I do, how I
Sure.
think, you know, what I sound like, you know, all that stuff. And I get to do it basically for free. I mean, it costs me, I think, $5 a month to host these podcasts on Podbean.
Yeah. Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah.
So
So
what?
can
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
go.
in response to it, you know, one of the reasons I thought this would be fun was that you came via Kate, who is not only a very good friend, but someone I respect immensely. So if you'd got Kate's seal of approval, it was like, okay, he's good. If you'd reached out to me directly, I might have gone, you know what, he's in America. It's not my market. I don't know whether I could be bothered. Yeah.
Yeah.
But the second thing was when you did reach out to me, and I could see that you'd done 125 odd episodes already. So I was like, all right, this guy's got some consistency. You know, he's kept, he's been delivering. And then when you said there's no questions, I was like, beautiful. I love that, because it is going to be a free, spontaneous, free flowing conversation.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, when I did a little bit of research, you know, I pull up your LinkedIn page and stuff like that, go to your websites. I saw that you're an actor, and I'm like,
Yeah.
that's a little close to home, because my degree is in theater, and I have,
Oh, no way.
I have absolutely zero certifications in advertising and marketing, but I'm a human being who's been a consumer of advertising and marketing since I was a very small pup. And consequently, I'm an expert in it, just like anyone else is, which is, if it attracts my attention, if it captures my imagination, if it involves me emotionally, I'm going to be interested enough to find out more. And, you know, it kind of goes back to your definition of storytelling, which is good branding is about telling, in my case, absolutely true nonfiction stories via the way you demonstrate what you do and how you do it, and you know, who you are. Let me say that again. And it's you demonstrate your brand and tell your story by just being completely true, completely you, and demonstrate who you are, what you do, and how you do it. And,
Absolutely right.
you know, going back to my actor days, that's not what acting was about. Acting was about putting on a front, being cooler than everybody else in the audition, you know, walking in with this a 12-pound bag of confidence when you feel
Yeah,
like, oh my God, everyone looks like me and they're better than me. But, you know, I found out very early on as an actor, if I didn't actually care about getting the part, I
yes,
had a much higher conversion rate.
correct. Absolutely.
Yeah,
The minute I realized with auditioning to not worry about the outcome, but to just enjoy the audition, I look at auditions now as half an hour in the day of where I actually get to be an actor, you know?
right, right.
And as long as I've done my preparation and my research and I've got to bed early and I've not eaten a load of carbs an hour beforehand and I've got myself in the best possible position and I can go in there and do my best, then that is a really good outcome for me. I know that the decision whether they pick me might isn't always on whether I'm did the best performance, but it's whether I looked the part, looked had that would have that visual chemistry with other people. There's lots of reasons, you know. So it puts you in good stead, especially when it comes to sales as well. You know, like um, you get used to a lot of rejection with acting, and it's the same with sales. You know, and with the pipeline sales funnel, I know that as long as I'm doing the quotes, a certain percentage of them will convert.
Yeah. Well, one of my favorite internal sayings to myself and to others is that fear is flammable, meaning that you
Mhm.
can burn it out of you. And if
Yeah,
you've been on
yeah,
over, I don't know, 100 auditions, you don't have fear anymore. I mean, it's too much
you're
emotional baggage. It's like I walk in, I look around, and there are 15 people who look exactly like me. My
right.
odds of getting that job are probably 1 in 15.
Yeah,
If I'm really good, maybe I can make it the odds 1 in 10.
yeah,
All right,
totally.
cool.
Totally.
If I walk, but here's the thing, and I was just talking to someone about how they got their first job, and they said they got it not because of their resume or their CV. They got it when, and the HR person told them this, something like 500 people applied for the job, and this person got it because of her personality and her
Yeah.
confidence and her energy. You know, she came in, and I've been hearing this over and over here in the States that HR people are saying the thing they look for is not on a resume or in a CV. It's in the energy that that
Hmm.
person comes in with in the meeting. Like if they want to be there, if they have a smile on their face, even if they get a
Yeah,
few questions wrong or, maybe not an optimal answer, it doesn't matter.
that's
Be,
learning.
yeah, well, exactly, because a lot of businesses take the point of view that we can teach them the stuff we need them to, the systems, the
Yeah,
processes that we use. We
yeah,
need to know that they're decent people worth investing that time and money into to teach them,
yeah.
and I think that's huge when it comes to people trying to create a personal brand. Now, let me ask you this question about Australia in general. Personal
Mm,
branding here in the United States is very big. It was introduced in 1997 by Tom Peters in a Fast Company magazine article. It's been around forever, but it's really, really taken off in a world where people think influencers
mm,
equals personal brand. And
mm,
I say, kind of, but not really. Personal brands don't have to be influencers, but personal
mhm.
brands are influencers, but not in the Instagram influencer way.
Sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Has personal branding taken off in Australia the way it has here?
Hmm. It's a good question. Look, certainly if you break it into stereotypes, that our stereotype impression of America is the big brash, I'm amazing, I can do anything type approach. Whereas in Australia, it's very much very laid back, and if anyone gets a bit above their station, we'll take this. It's called we'll take the tickets off you.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
bring you down to size a bit. Yeah. There's a much, and it's in Britain where there's quite a class-based system. In America, in Australia, it's it's very it's much flatter. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Personal branding. I mean, of course, obviously, you've always had your celebrities and their branding, but when it comes to look, I think in the startup entrepreneurial space has exploded here in the last 10 years, as I'm sure it has in Australia. Everyone has their side hustle. There's lots of incubators and startup hubs everywhere, and the co-working space is huge. So I think there's a lot of people that do have are creating their own brand. It's certainly interesting with the pandemic, everybody working from home, and as a creative industry business advisor, a lot of my clients are starting the side up and the hustle, and it's something that we talk about a lot in that instance is very early on. It's not about what your product is and who you want to sell it to is, but what are your values? And values can often be a very fluffy word, and certainly in big enterprise can feel a bit what's the word? Um, in big enterprise, they can feel that they've been done by committee a bit. So when it comes to personal branding at the small end of town, which is where I kind of specialize in, if you can find your values and find your tone of voice, then you'll present yourself as yourself. I don't want to use the authentic word because I hate the word authentic.
Oh, so do I. I do too. But I love the fact that you hit on values. In fact, I have a nonfiction brand formula. It's pretty simple math because I'm terrible at math, right? It's your value plus your values equal your personal brand. So my value to you as a purveyor of services or as a human being, plus my values, the way I do it, the things I care about, that is more or less the basis of my personal brand. And I think that's kind of what you just described, which is, and that's where true, I think, concord comes between people is when their values line up.
Yeah.
And people will say, well, what does that mean, values? Well, again, you demonstrate your values every day. Like I've been on sets, big commercial sets where we're multiple trucks, multiple cameras, all that stuff. My rule of thumb for myself was when it's lunch break time, everybody goes first. I go last to the craft services table, especially if the client's there. I make sure that they're in front of me for sure, but also all the actors and the grips and the DP, the real DP, not the fake DP, but the director of photography, all those people who are actually putting in a hard day's work, they go first. And I don't make a big deal about it, but it's a demonstration of one of my key values, which is let these people, these hard workers who really need to take the time, have as much time as they can to eat lunch. Because I'm going to work them hard in the rest of the day, but they have earned it.
I was teaching at Sydney Film School before Christmas to their cohort on the business of being an actor. And there was a few little things that I said to them about, not just being on time, but maybe arrive half an hour early.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's such a simple thing. And as a producer, and I'm sure you'll relate to this, you've written a million call sheets, and of course you send them out, and no one ever reads the call sheet.
Right.
But I love it when I do send out call sheets and the cast or the crew respond, "Thanks, Nick, got the call sheet, all good."
Yeah.
It's like, what, 5 words?
Right.
It tells me that I know they've received it, they've understood it, and there's no issues. And it took them like 5 seconds,
But that's a demonstration of your values as a performer, as a member of the crew, whatever. It's the understanding that if you're a producer, you're juggling 5,000 balls during every production. And if you can have one thing taken off your plate in terms of stress by knowing that, okay, my key people are going to be there on time because they've acknowledged receipt of the call sheet.
Yeah.
I'll sleep better tonight. Thank you very much. And by the way, as a producer, who are you going to call the next time you have a production? Those people who have demonstrated who they are, what they do, and how they do it in a way that demonstrates their values.
Expertise, authority, and trust. Yeah.
Yep.
The trust, because they've responded to simple thing like a call sheet, and they turned up half an hour early, and it's like, all right, I can rely on them. They're not going to cause me grief.
Yeah. Is personal branding as easy as that? Well, That's not just only that. In fact, that's why I'm excited to have Nick on next week's episode of the Nonfiction Brand Podcast too, where we will continue this conversation. But for now, I got to wrap this up because we're kind of going into the 30-minute territory on this. So I want to say, Nick, how can people connect with you online if they're interested? Is there a website or a social channel that you frequent most often?
Yeah, I'm mostly predominant on Facebook, so Nick Bolton in Sydney. Our website is 10alphas.com.au, and I'm on LinkedIn, and I use Twitter a bit. So yeah, Facebook and LinkedIn, and if you want to email me, nick@10alphas.com.au, I'm always open to hear from people.
Well, great. Well, Nick's going to be on next week, but for now, I'm DP Knudten for the Nonfiction Brand Podcast, and he is
Nick Bolton.
And we'll be talking at you again next week. Bye-bye. Pause, pause, pause. And we continue the conversation. So last week, listeners will remember that we were talking about film sets or, video productions. And specifically, Nick, as a producer of video, how he appreciates a small 30-second little acknowledgement of a call sheet as just something so important for him as a producer, and also as an indicator of the value that crew member, that actor, that makeup artist, whoever it was, has for him. What other things do you look for when you've got actors or crew people on the set when it comes to what I would call the personal brand demonstration activity that catches your attention?
Yeah. It never ceases to amaze me how many cast and crew would send me their resume or their headshot or show reel and not put their name in the file name.
Yeah. Oh my, yeah. So
headshot img7481.jpg.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's like tying your shoes.
Yes.
Are you telling me you don't tie your shoes? Why wouldn't it be, in my case, DP Knudten portrait or square? Sometimes I'll put the word square in there just so I know that, this is the square aspect ratio photo rather than more of a true portrait or something. But boy, you're right. People won't even do the minimum to demonstrate their care.
Should just be a given. It's a very small thing, but it's something very true. I always say, especially with actors, be respectful. If you don't get it, if you are lucky enough to be given that rejection email, which often doesn't happen, and I understand why, no harm in replying, thanks for thinking of me, and just being respectful back. On set, I think it's, I do love it. You don't want cast and crew that are, you just, if I'm director or producer, giving them the information to fulfill the task. You want them to challenge you back, but in a really lovely, collaborative way, like a respectful way. Like, have you thought about doing it this way? Or we could do it this way. And, you've hired those cast and crew because they are better at their specific task than you are. As a producer, you have to have a broad knowledge of every aspect, but you obviously can't be master of all of them because that's just impossible. But I want that cast or crew member to have engaged in a conversation, to have questioned the process, whether that's in pre-production or production,
Right. So what you're kind of asking for is what Walt Disney back in the day called plussing. It's like, I hired you to not only run a camera, but I want you to suggest, if we did a move like this, it'll add this, that, and the other thing. And I'm sure we both could list a whole bunch of top shelf directors who have literally gotten their Academy Award level stuff done because of the editor they always use or the cinematographer they always use. I'm sorry, Martin Scorsese, but Thelma Schoonmaker has more Academy Awards for
Yeah.
your films than you do for your own.
With filmmaking and content production, you're always working with lots of different people at very short notice for an intense period of time, and then you might not see them for a while. And every time we do a production, you're observing everybody and firstly how you get on with them just from a chemistry perspective. And I do like to work with people that have a similar chemistry to me. But every time you go, right, that hair makeup artist, she didn't quite do it for me, but that art director, she was good. Yeah, she went above and beyond, and she did it graciously and respectfully. You know, and it's like when people don't send their invoices for about another month afterwards, and you're chasing them to give you an invoice. It's like we want to wrap this up.
Right.
We want to get all our administration sort of done. So yeah, experience brings. Doing multiple projects brings that experience and brings that you start developing your team of trusted advisors around you, which when you work better and more collaboratively, then when the shit does hit the fan, which things happen, that can be out of your control, and you've all got to muck in together because you've got that, I guess, lived experience of all the good times. You're more likely to muck in together and sort it out because
Yeah.
there'll be more good around the corner.
Well, and for listeners who've never been on any type of video set or film set, those days can be brutal. They can be 20-hour days.
Mm-hmm.
And, especially if you're an actor, you could sit there for 12 hours of those 20 hours, not doing anything. Right. And as an actor, you have to know when to stay out of the way, keep your mouth shut. Yep. And yet when you're called, you're up, your lines are ready to be nailed perfectly. And if the director wants to do 50 takes, you do 50 takes. If they want to do 2 takes and do it right, get it in 2, you make sure you can get it in 2. And those actors who don't are not on that director's set ever again.
And that's right. Absolutely.
And by the way, if you're an actor who didn't get the part, but you were close and an actor flames out on the first day of filming, don't be surprised if all of a sudden there's a call that says, can you be here in the next half hour? Yeah. And the answer is always, yes, I can.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
It's interesting how much the hierarchy and protocols of film I apply to, I guess, more corporate content production. A great example for me is like, as an actor, I love it when the director comes and has a quiet word to you very privately, one-on-one. DP, I loved how you did that. Look, I'd just like to do it again. Can you just up the ante 10%, the energy and the anger 10%, all right? We might not use it, but let's just do it for shits and giggles and see how it works. Is that all right? And it's a private, intimate note, and I know clearly why that's been given. When you do a TV commercial and the clients aren't aware of that, and they've of course got their pressure of, getting this thing done on budget, on time, and we've got to make sales from it. I've seen so many clients, shout directly and be vocal, and because they don't have that emotional intelligence of how to articulate the criticism in a constructive way, it can be so damaging because the actor in particular feels so ridiculed in front of all the people.
Well, and boy, if you want to talk about the most vulnerable human being on the face of the earth, it's an actor in front of a camera. Because as an actor who may be theatrically trained, regular live theater, improv comedy, on camera, all that stuff, you know how to turn stuff up or turn it down, but you rely on the external eye of the director to attenuate or, accelerate or, enhance the performance. And frankly, you don't know if you're too big or what we call here in the States, over the top. If you're over the top, It's like, no, 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 dial it back. But here's
Bring it
one,
back. Bring it back.
yeah, one of the rules of acting. I'm sure you know this rule too, which is too big can always be brought down, but too
Mm,
small can never be brought up.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but still, it comes back to that trust, and that trust is earned even
Mm,
from the first take. Like if the
mm,
director throws down their script and is looking at you with daggers flying from their eyes, there is no trust. But if
yeah.
they
Correct.
but if they did what you just described, which was you're a professional, I'm a professional, we can have a professional conversation. I might have to come down on you a little bit hard, but I won't do it in front of anyone else.
Yeah.
And I won't even do it in a way that makes it feel like I'm coming down on you hard, because I
Yeah.
know that if I say that wasn't quite there, you know what that means, which is you aren't even close.
I can remember very early years ago in my career, one of the first big sets I'd ever been on, sort of an assistant role, and I'd forgotten something. I can't remember what it was, and I was like, "Oh shit, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry." And I started running to go and get it because I thought I'm holding everybody up. Ran back and gave the person the thing, and he gets me, "Thanks, mate, well done." Little tip: don't run because you're demonstrating to everybody that you've got something wrong.
Yeah.
And just keeping that calm, composed manner, not drawing attention to yourself. And it's the same when it comes to public speaking. It's the same doing this discussion. I mean, you love beautifully told me that you'll be editing out the ums and the ahs. When one of us has stumbled. It teaches you a lot about that of presenting yourself uh, calmly rather than um, being flustered.
Yeah. And we were talking about being on sets and stuff like that, especially commercial uh, TV productions. There's client there, there's agency there, but to
Yeah,
the production company, there are two clients there because the production company is serving the agency and the client that is the producing company of the product or service. So productions company, from the production company's point of view, those people are both equally important. But the real truth is the agency has two clients as well, the production company and the client, because for me, I want to get the best work.
mm,
And the best work is gotten the way you just said, which is walk up very quietly and say,
yeah,
this isn't working. Just
yeah,
wanted you to know that. I
yeah,
think she's getting a little bit upset. And then I walk away.
yeah. That's right.
And I am, if you're an agency copywriter, yeah, I wrote every word. I know it up, down, sideways. I want the best production. If you, as the
Mm,
director, say, you know, that person, that actor can't say that word or that phrase, can we
yeah,
change it a little bit? And we've all
yeah,
done that, right? Or I know you carefully timed this to be a 30-second TV advert. Actually, it's coming out like 40 seconds. We need to do some editing. Boy, that's a dance of death unless it's handled professionally and very carefully. And that's the value. It's not just me, the copywriter, typing that provides value. It's me understanding the dynamic on the set and how that works and being respectful of the team that we've brought together to create this thing. Even if at the end of the production, I'm going, I'm never working with these guys again.
sure, totally.
Yeah.
But you still got to fulfill your professional duty and get it done, and don't
Yeah.
just write it up.
Yeah, and
And
and you did it right when it happened to me when I left the agency in Atlanta. My client, I had a very close relationship with. I said,
yeah,
"Hey, I'm moving back to Denver, Colorado," and she looked at me, all the blood drained out of her face, and she said, "Oh, DP, don't do that," because we had built a relationship where I respected what she needed to get.
yeah,
I understood what that was and I could translate that. And part of my huge value for her was that she knew it was handled.
yeah,
All she had to say was, I don't like that. Great. Let me take care of that. We walk over,
right,
we talk about it, blah, blah, blah.
yeah.
Yep.
Um, it's this all comes back to, again, running your own business and um, taking on the jobs you want to and not taking on the jobs you don't want to. And
Right.
the first year of business is always the hardest because you always get, usually most people get half the revenue they forecast and double the costs.
Right.
And a lot of people just take the work because they need the cash flow to just even pay the bills and put food on the table. um, some are lucky they don't have to do that, and that is wonderful, but majority would be that way. And that it's that's quite an interesting conundrum, isn't it, when it comes to branding and values of like taking work because you have to, and then as you get bigger or more experience, you're able to turn work down, which always feels really good.
Yeah, it does, but it's interesting that the way you brought it up, tying back to something you said last week about you being a laid back guy, you're not I'm going to use my own words, but you're not a hard charging type A
Yeah,
person. You're not a hard charging type A person. You're much more collaborative, but in kind of a collegial way rather
yeah,
than a scientific collaborator way, if you know what I mean. There's a
yes, I do.
big difference.
Yeah.
And yet, I'm thinking of another director from the 80s and 90s here in the United States, Joe Pitka. He was known as the most martinet hard ass in the world, and he drove crews crazy, but he was the A-plus director for Pepsi, for Ford Motor Company, for you name it. He was the go-to guy when you had to get the thing done.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so his brand was based on his demeanor and his output, what he could create. Other people totally different on set. And
Yeah.
consequently, if a company came to you needing a Joe Pitka, they were never going to get a Joe Pitka
Totally.
because that's not who you are.
Yeah.
So you would have left them unsatisfied.
Correct. Absolutely.
Right.
I think with our work as well, as we've evolved, we've been going 7 years now, and now we the work we're getting is much more around social impact and health and uh, helping people's lives. Rather than in the early days, there's a lot more tech stuff. We did a lot of tech work, um, and that's nice because as we've been able to do the we've been able to do the work that we want to. And so now our portfolio is more representative of who we are,
Right.
and um, and then that attracts more like-minded type people, because the work we don't want to do, look at our portfolio and go, oh, you know what, they look a great company, but I don't think tonally they're quite right for us.
Yeah, and I think that's what a lot of people don't understand about branding. Branding is
Yeah,
not to create a brand that applies or attracts everyone. It's
yeah,
designed to allow people to differentiate and say, you're not the brand for me. This other thing is the brand for me. And it truly is about differentiation because let's just keep talking about film production, video production. Production companies are a dime a dozen. If
mm,
you are just a production company, you can be replaced by another production company at any time. But if you develop a style that is uniquely your own, if you have a service uh, style or a service personality that people choose to prefer because it's more aligned with who they are and how they like to work, you are not one of many, you're one of one. And that's the goal of branding, is to become one of one of who you truly are.
mm. I've got a lovely anecdote on there actually. About 2 years ago, an aged care company. So I don't know if that's what the same term in America, but an elderly residential home.
Yeah.
Yeah. So an aged care company, big one, approached us to pitch for a documentary they were doing on end of life. So people that knew they had 12 months or less to live, and what life means, and what healthcare means to them. And we went in there, and we got the pitch deck out, and we did who we are, what we do, who we've done it for, identical. And I said these words. I said, you will have seen every other pitch we've gone through pretty much, why we're good at storytelling and deliver on budget and blah, 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 blah. But this is my last slide. And I showed them a short film that I had made that was honoring my mum, who had died of cancer after 5 years. And it was a dramatic narrative piece. It wasn't like a video diary piece. It was a proper narrative film. And I said, the reason you should go with us is because I've got the lived experience of watching my mum die over 5 years. So that when I come to be interviewing those our talent, I've got that lived experience to be able to continue the discussion where your other production companies might not. And I knew I'd got them there.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Well,
yeah.
Oh, see, you did what I talk about so much on this podcast. You demonstrated who you are, what you do, and how you do it by telling your story in a way and demonstrating your very heartfelt personal story in a way that they totally connected with. And I guarantee you that's what they wanted.
Totally.
We don't need a sterile, this is how people die when they're, no.
Yeah.
They want to tell the true story of that type of end of life situation. And you gave them, okay, that video you gave them at the end, let's say they saw 5 other production companies.
Yeah.
Everybody does the same stuff that you talked about, the same pitch deck, all that stuff. If you've been in a pitch where there have been 5 people and you're in the middle of that pitch, they don't remember you by the end of the 5th pitch.
Yeah.
Unless you give them a brand handle. Who are those guys? They're the ones with the film about his mother. Oh yeah, I love those guys.
Yeah.
The memorable thing that is not a gimmick, because I mean, let's face it, you showing that film, some people could say, wow, that's pretty manipulative. But I'm sure it didn't come off that way at all.
No.
You shared.
The funny thing about that film is that the production values are pretty crap because it was done with no budget and no resources. My wife and I made that on a DSLR and mobile phone, So production values wise, it's not shiny and polished like our show reel is, but as far as heart goes, one of the things I was going to ask you when I was preparing for this chat was something I do with my students to just demonstrate that we're all capable of putting emotion into storytelling and then branding. It's a really simple exercise. And I know during this pandemic, we all work from home now, but let's imagine you are still working in that ad agency in town, yeah? I'm going to ask you, how did you get to work?
How do I get there?
Okay, imagine you are working. Tomorrow you've got to go to work in the ad agency, all right? How do you get to work?
I'd hop in my car, drive there, park, get out, walk in. Yeah.
What most people say. And the response I give is like, I drove to work and I parked in the car park, and as I got out, I needed a coffee. And I went to the local coffee cart, and there was an old man there playing the violin. And he started playing It's a Wonderful Life. So I got my coffee and I just sat down on the bench and just listened to this man play this beautiful song and thought about life and what I'm grateful for. And at the end, gave him a tip and went on my way in a much better frame of mind and got to work. So it's a very basic, simple example of how you can put emotion and feeling into what is a very mundane question, yeah? By putting your heart and how it makes you feel. And I think if we can all try and do that in our personal branding, it's going to be more effective.
Well, I think what's key is that you demonstrated emotion in a way that I don't know if it's the same in Australia, but when people say emotion here, it tends to go all the way to dramatic emotion.
Sure, correct.
It's either crying or yelling, screaming, fingers waving in your face, as opposed to no, it's merely taking it out of my description of driving to work, and adding a little bit of
bit of color.
I bet you that was nice. And guess whose story is remembered by the audience? Not mine.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wow, what a great conversation, Nick. I can't thank you enough for taking the time to do this. I'm talking with Nick Bolton, who is a filmmaker, video producer, actor, lecturer at the what is that? What's the AF?
AFTRS, Australian Film, Television and Radio School, AFTRS, AFTRS.
And that's the premier school for
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So there's basically two main schools. AFTRS is for crew, and NIDA is for actors. So your Kate Blanchetts, Russell Crowe's all went through NIDA, and then with AFTRS, all your big great DPs and directors have gone through AFTRS. Basically, it's a wonderful organization.
Well, Nick's a great guy and a good friend of both of ours. Kate Toon is a regular on the Nonfiction Brand podcast, and she introduced us to each other, and I'm so glad she did, because obviously Nick has a lot to say, and I would love to invite people to connect to Nick via social media or website or whatever. So, Nick, how can people connect with you if they are so interested?
Yeah, look, love to hear from people. Our company website is 10alphas.com.au, tenalphas.com.au. I'm on LinkedIn, Nick Bolton, Sydney, Australia. Facebook, I'm on. So reach out, please. And email is nick@10alphas.com.au.
Well, there you go. I mean, and by the way, I always tell people this is a pro tip. If you ever go to a conference and you hear people with Australian accents, go seek them out, because they're the nicest, warmest, kindest people you'll ever meet. And by the way, they'll introduce you to every other single Australian at that conference. And by the end, you'll have 20 new friends, guaranteed. That's certainly been true for me, DP Knudten, here at the Nonfiction Brand Podcast. That's it for this week's episode. Thanks, Nick, for being on. One more time, I got to say it again. I'm DP Knudten for the Nonfiction Brand Podcast, and he is
Nick Bolton.
And I'll be talking at you next week. Bye-bye. Ding. Thank you so much, Nick. I really had a great time talking to you. And it was so great to get to know you. One of these days, I'm going to make it down to Sydney, and we'll have to go out and get a pint.
Exactly. No, 2.
Oh, okay. I'm up for that.
Good, man.
Good. Lovely. Well, this is the start of your day, right?
It's about, what time did we start? It was 11, so it's midday now. Yeah, I've got a bit of script writing to do this afternoon.
Good.
And a call, so. Yeah.
Well, I'll let you go because I've got what I need. I will inform you when the podcast goes live. It'll probably be maybe up to a month from now, but maybe mid next month. I'm not sure. I got to look at the schedule, but I will let you know about that. And if you have ever got anything going on in the future that you think would be cool to share with this audience, let me know and we'll get you back on.
All right, beautiful. Well, look, thanks for the opportunity, and lovely talking to you, mate. And hopefully we will have a pint one day.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care and have a good day.
Cheers, man.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye-bye.